welcome. My name is Terry Wolf. I'm one of the volunteers here at the Sister Bay Historical Society. And so on behalf of the society, the board members who are here, welcome to this, the last in our 5-part series on important businesses and families of Sister Bay. So, as many of you know, we started the season with the Funda family. Mitch Larson did a presentation. And then we had the Razor family later on. The next one was Al Johnson's. And then our last one was Connie Grotenhuis doing the patio drive-in. So I can't think of any more fitting way to end our season in this series than to have this program tonight on the Little Sister Resort and Fred Fuzzy's and the Little Sister Barn. So we thank them for doing this presentation, but before we bring Fuzzy up to the podium, let me just talk a little bit more about the Sister Bay Historical Society, things that we've done this season and things that we have yet to do. And we invite your participation in those. So, we have had, once again, a successful farmers market led by Roberta Kutlick, who's Saturday. In her umpteenth year of leading the farmers market and many other activities. We've had a successful season of tours, and Friday, we're still doing some yet this week, so if you want to squeeze in a tour, we're still doing them through Friday of this week. We've had the ice cream social, we had the fish boil earlier this summer, so a good season all around, lots of participation. 2 events that are very important that are still in the works are the move of the Little Sister Barn and the Chris Kindle Market. So let me just say a word about both of those. So the Chris Kindle Market, most of you are familiar with that. Our first one done last year, very successful, and we're going to repeat that in 3 weekends after Thanksgiving. So the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday after Thanksgiving, and the 2 weekends after that, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we'll be having the Chris Kindle Market. And for those of you who attended last year, come again, because there will be new vendors and new food vendors as well. It will be an even better event this year, so please come. And I should add that if you are interested at all in volunteering, because we need lots of hands for that, please see one of us over here at the table afterwards to sign up for something. So the other work in progress is the move of the Little Sister Barn. So most of you have seen that up on the hill. Came over on March 8th of this year. It was quite the spectacle watching that come down the road. So just a quick update on where things are relative to the barn. So within the next couple of weeks, the expectation is that the excavation will begin for the foundation. The foundation will be poured, and the building, the barn set on that foundation, and weatherized all before the end of the year. That is a huge and important next step. So thanks to all who have helped to make that possible. The next big step in that project is then the creation of the interior, the refurbishing of the interior to turn that into a year-round history center. And that will be another very big project, so watch the news for that in the springtime to hear what the program is going to be and what help we'll need in making that happen. And beyond volunteers, we also welcome you if you're interested in becoming a member of the Sister Bay Historical Society for the extremely reasonable rates of $25 for a single and $40 for a family, unchanged for years. Let's see, so let me then do a little bit of intro for the program this evening. So the person who is going to lead the program really doesn't need any introduction, Greg, aka Fuzzy Sunstrom, is going to lead the show this evening, but I want to say just a little bit more about Sunstroms and the family and the contributions before Fuzzy gets up here. So many of you know, some of you don't, that throughout the grounds of the Sister Bay Historical Society's Corner of the Past, we have many items that have been donated by the Sunstrom family, kindly. One big example of that is right here in the room, the boat. But there are others scattered throughout our grounds, and we are grateful for all those donations. There are things about the Sunstrom family. Fuzzy's and Jean's dad, Willard, there's an exhibit in the machine shed about his work. So earlier this season, I mentioned fish boil, the Sunstrom family, so Fuzzy, Susie, Jean, Karen, all helped put that, really helped it. They led that and put that fish boil together, and we're very grateful for that as well. The sunflowers, nicely shown on the screen here. So if you didn't have a chance, or you may have had a chance, as we did, to grab some sunflowers from the field, Fuzzy and Susie's field over here, and the proceeds from that went to the Sister Bay Historical Society. So we are grateful in many ways for the many contributions that the Sunstrom family has made, and we are really excited to hear this program this evening. So Fuzzy, without further ado, to you.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to bore you a little bit. First off, we're going to go through a little bit of the history that's before we were at the resort. The beginning of Little Sister Resort can be traced back to August of 1865, when Anderson and his 21-year-old son Gunnar left Trondheim to escape compulsory military service in Norway. Gunnar's sister had preceded them to America and was settled in Ephraim, to which place they therefore naturally went. 5 years after arriving in America, Gunnar, now spelling his name as Gunder, bought 108 acres of wild timberland along the shores of Little Sister Bay. Having no cash to pay for the property, he contracted instead to furnish 500 bushels of potatoes over a period of 3 years. The contract also stated that all small and rotten potatoes to be picked out, and if the potato should fail, the efficiency to be paid in cash at a rate of 75 cents a bushel. At the time of the last payment, the rate Little Sister property was bought for was $412.50. And that was about 1874. Gunnar's signature on the contract was an X. Each day Gunnar walked 3 miles from his sister's home to work on his land, clear space for a cabin, build a pier where schooners could stop to haul his logs to Green Bay, Sturgeon Bay, and Chicago. Another Anderson family settled not far from Gunnar's land. They were Swedes who had come from Chicago, and then after the big fire to Door County, in that family Gunnar met his future wife, Emma. Gunnar and Emma reared 10 children in their primitive home on the shores of Green Bay, taught them the Baptist Creed, and by example, how to use resources at hand. Emma wove cloth for their clothes. They lived on fish, venison, bear meat, and a few grains of potatoes from the land. Gunnar was gradually clearing up trees and stumps in the autumn. The children married into families of other Norwegians and Swedish settlers. One of their sons, Grant, settled at Little Sister and eventually bought the property. From 1900 until after the First World War, Grant engaged in commercial fishing. He and his brother paid for their nets in 2 years by furnishing a company in Marinette, Wisconsin with 800 packages of salted fish. And a package is 100 pounds. 200 each spring and fall at a rate of $1 a package. Their season extended from May to middle June, and from September until the ice forced them off to lift their nets. The fishing rig consisted of a 25-foot sailboat and later replaced by a gasoline boat, and a couple of skiffs, and many hundreds of feet of nets. They used the pond net, which is really pound net, but everybody up here called them pond nets, which were a square net with a lead line that the fish would hit the lead line, go into the pot, and then they lift the pot up. Let's see. That was a common use of nets. During the busy season of fishing, they kept as many as 10 men at the dressing table cutting fish. salting the herring and packing in the 100-pound wooden kegs called packages. About 1911, the Anderson brothers sold the fishing business. Grant took over the management of the farm from his aging father and gradually changed from grain farming to dairying. In the 20th century, travelers wishing to escape the summer heat of Chicago and other cities would ride up to the various docks in Door County via many of the lake steamers and either buy or seek a temporary place to enjoy our paradise. During the booming 20s, wagon runs became roads to accommodate the Rios, Pierce Arrows, and Model Ts in transit. With the coming of the auto, the future of the peninsula as a vacation land was secure. By 1918, the Anderson family, Grant married a Swede, whose maiden name was Lydia Peterson, and started their resort business. They began lodging and feeding a few guests at the farmhouse. Later, they built cabins for those who were asking for accommodations. Each year, Grant with his horse and buggy met more guests at the piers of Sister Bay and Ephraim. Once they had tasted Mrs. Anderson's juicy roast and luscious cherry pies served at the instructions, eat as much as you want, and had lived up in the unsophisticated comfort of a small cabin nestled under the pines, they joined the ranks of repeaters. Little Sister Resort, with its modern equipment and conveniences, still has cottages nestled under the pines with an atmosphere of family living. From the Andersons to our time, the Lubers purchased the property in 1973, and the Andersons ran it for them that year. Then Susie and I started running it in 1974, and we were there till 2020. So we had 46 years at a wonderful place. Start off with this picture. This shows the logging, and that was clearing all the land for their farming. And they sold the bark, they sold the lumber, and that was where their start. This was some of their good fishing that they always talked about, and their customers many times would send letters back about how the wonderful fishing was. There is one of the small cabins, and it was still pretty similar to that other than the inside remodel, but the fireplaces were still like that on the walls in what they called the honeymoon cottages. And it was funny because the honeymoon cottages had twin beds. There's a little snowy drive down the resort, and it looks like they had lumber space there to dry. There was one of the steamers that used to stop at the different bays. I think this was the Goodrich, but I'm not positive on that. There was the original house where Gunnar lived, which later became the waitress cabin. And then for a few years, Roland and his wife would stay out there during the summer so they could rent out their house. We just laughed about this because my brother just gave me a pair of our wooden stilts a week ago. There was the farmhouse that we lived in later, and that was early, and best I could tell, they put 13 additions on it. And there was the modest cottages they had, and that was a water tank that they had for pressure in those days. They pumped the water up to there, and then gravity fed to the other units. Picture of wintertime, you can see it was you'll see later on there's an addition off the end of the resort dining room, and then the cottages didn't have screen porches yet. And there is the boat that you see right over here. And we don't know who was on it, but I understand that Winfield was the person that used it the most. There's another picture of this sailboat, ice boat. And this is a postcard. It's kind of interesting that you have a beautiful bay and you send out a postcard that says the Burgess. I'll just go through, and I'm not sure who these ladies are. And there again, that's a picture just across the resort, open yard, and it wasn't cut in those days. Now, if you look at the person on the right, we're quite sure that that's Roland Anderson. And if If you look, those are full-piece suits that they pulled down for the picture. We're not sure who this is, but it was in their pictures. And there was a picture, they had a tennis court way before its time. And then that was the old lodge in the background, and that had 17 rooms in it. And there's inside of that building. And this is another view of the original homestead. That was built in 1875, and that's all hollyhocks along there. Another picture from a different angle. There's a better look at the tennis court. It was all wooden stakes. And there's the first picture we have of the barn. Okay, there's where the road used to go. It used to come right past, that was the house we lived in. And all the traffic, when we were there off the golf course, came right past our kitchen window. And then the building, kind of on the right, or with the end of it looking at us, that was the sawmill. That's where all the boards were cut for the barn and for the sawmill. And for, we think the other barns in the area also were all cut in that sawmill. And there was Grant. That's about one of the few pictures I have of Grant. Okay, there's a picture, a little newer picture, but still a tennis court there. And this I was put on there just to show the stone walls. And those stone walls are all built by Grant. Aerial view. There it shows how small the cottages were originally. Let's go through these. Okay, that was you can see the office or the dining room before it was extended. There, that was one of the early brochures, and they had a person skiing like on a board rather than water skis. There, that was the original boathouse, and Lorene Lagerquist, who was the old mechanic in town, said if you want to look for your boathouse pictures, always look for, see, right near the water side of the boathouse, the window's on a diamond. He said anytime you see a picture with the window on a diamond, it's your boathouse. This is just some pictures that people sent to us. They drew this in '54. And here was the bus and train timetables that they sent out to the people so they could figure out when to get here and how to get here. And that was in Bay Lake, was the bus for Lake and Bay. And this was a schedule that gave them when the boats, when the trains, and when the bus ran. There's kind of just a desolate winter picture. Now there's the picture of the lodge that's no longer, which wasn't even, that went down before we were there. Went down in '73. There now, if you look at the end of that building, it has a door cut in it because they use that for housing later on for their staff. And where our house was, you can see it's all going over with trees. Just a few waterfront pictures. Now this is where Fred and Fuzzy's was. And we actually have pictures of them taking their cattle down there for water. There, this is a good time for free. The woman there won, I forgot where it was, participating something, Decatur anyhow, she won this trip. was given away to come up here for a week. And there she is again, the same one. Right, tell us. Yeah, she was given it by United Travel Service in Hotel Orlando. Here, if you look at the student coffee shop, pies 10 cents, pudding a nickel, sandwiches 15 cents. And this is just Grant Anderson that passed away at age 68. And there was his wife passed away at 74. And some of these I'll just kind of go through because there's a lot of different shots of the same cottages. There again is the lodge. Oh, and this was a gentleman who I got to meet later on. He was there in '63, and he trained German shepherds for the German army. So I was talking about his father at this time, but yeah, he trained for the German army, and I did put on the gear, went out and fought his dog. Here was something we're not quite sure about. I mean, those of you who knew Winky Larson, it looks like it's his dad driving the boat. But there must have been a cruise or a charter boat that came out of Sister Bay and went around, took people for sunset cruises is what we're guessing. There's a couple different ones, 3 different ones. There in the stone wall, you can see how beautiful and straight it was all along there. There, now you can tell by the year of the car. Fred, what year is it? Yeah. There, now you can look at the rowboats. See, it's a little different than we have today. And they had a lot of them. Yeah, add your sweatshirt, you got it. See, now there's a different boat that they're coming up with. And maybe it was even a fishing boat, I'm not sure. There was the driveway going down to the water. There was the older docks. I'm not sure what the little structure on the right was, or on the left was used for. You can see the water level then was quite high also. This, I was just showing you, the old lodge is on the right, and that's cottage 17, we call it, was on the left, but at that time, that was the bathhouse. They had to go, there was a 17 rooms there, and then the bathroom was over there. And my brother and I tore that building down, and it was 3/4-inch boards between each room. That's all it was. So if you went like this on one end, you heard it on the other end. There again, here's another boat that came in. Now talk about high water. And there, I don't ever remember seeing that they had a lift for a boat. And it was kind of overgrown to get down there. It was a gravel road. And then this building was a fourplex that we built in 1982. There was one of the brochures. And this shows horse riding, which there was on top of the hill, right where the resale shop is, or the, what's it called?
Reclaim.
What's it? Reclaim. Yes, where Reclaim is, they had a riding stable up there. It was Florian Koturski, the same Florian that had the Florians afterwards. Yes. I'll go through this kind of talk. See, it was just showing they were showing on the map where to come from and how to get here. I'm showing you this. This is when our son was about 1.5 years old. But this is what you should not do when you first get married, is remodel while you're living in the house. Yeah, I'll show you a little more of that too. There. We tore the front off. And we tore the window out. All of it lived in the house. And like I said, that's not a good way to start a marriage. And there was our daughter. All the kids loved to be with Grace in the kitchen. She baked for us for many years after we bought the resort from them. She stayed on. She was a wonderful, wonderful baker. We should have a little winter shot. Now, many of you remember when we used to have Winterfest in Sister Bay. And everybody made, like this, some kind of sculptures out of snow and painted them. All the streets in Sister Bay were lined with these. We had it for 3 years, at least, because I'll show you. Being kids, we had to have Bert and Ernie. And this is out by the highway. And then this one was in the parade. We actually made a boat with a sail, and then a little kid behind it on another sleigh. And this, our daughter drew the barn at age 9. And this was our old tug we had for many years. And you can see they put it in with a crane and a backhoe. And they dropped it once. And this was, we had to lift our boathouse up 22 inches because of the high water. And you can see the blocking on the inside there. Believe it or not, I did it with the old hand crank jacks. And the gentleman, you go clockwise the first time, and clockwise the next time, otherwise you'll turn your building. You keep going around in circles. So, and that was just to show you inside, and I put the new studs in, and it was winter time, so I had a little wood stove to keep me warm. There was why we had to move everything. And there we are, we're doing this. Now this dock, Fred and I built. Fred cut all the metal in his plant in Milwaukee, and then I put it together as a crib, and we put it in place with the cranes. And did that one. And then here was the extension we put on the main dock. And there's driving the steel. This was our weekly run to Wilson's for ice cream cones. And I had 54 people on that boat one day. We had to borrow life jackets. There was a much younger guy doing a fish boil. And there's a picture of Fred and Ann, the Lubers, down at one of our fish boils. And this is what we did at our fish boils. We always had hors d'oeuvres down there. Usually we had pickled fish, smoked fish, and then we had a little tapper, a refrigerator on wheels, and we'd have root beer for the kids and beer for the adults. And there again, I just did this to show you, it's one of our groups that we did. Every year we did a group picture of our staff. And I'm showing you this picture because in '87, we had to put sewer and water into the resort, and it would have killed us. So I went out and bought a dump truck and a backhoe, and we dug it ourselves. And Susie got to be on the smart end of the transit. We drew all the lines and figured everything out. And so we were able to save a lot of money and put the sewer and water in. And there's this stairway we built down after we had dug it all up. And we used to have a swim raft, and then it became mandatory to have lights on it. So we took the swim raft up in. There were some kids I took out fishing one day. There's another staff picture, and there's Mabel dead center. And Winnie's right next to her. And then Fred is in the background, and Ann is with the blue shirt. Just an aerial. That was Fred's little toy. And here's what he loved to do. He took resort guests out all the time, sailing and later on the powerboat. So they were treated everybody really well. This isn't the best picture, but I put in there for a reason, is all those tables are the Sister Bay Bowl.
Yeah.
And the gardens were always a chore. We were very, very lucky in the original time. We had a garden by our workshop, and Ann Lubers' father took care of that for us, kept it up beautifully. Now see, that's the road when you used to look up where the lodge was. Now that's where we put the fourplex. There's the barn from a different angle. Before I go any further, does anybody have any questions about this part of it? Yes?
When did the boats stop coming and people started coming by train or bus? You know when that happened?
I'm too young to know that. I'm your age. Anybody here have any idea when the steamship quit coming up here?
1930s.
Okay, 1930s. Yes?
I would agree, in the early 1930s. Do you know when Grant Anderson died? I'm just curious. 69,
I thought it said 61 on the
Yeah, I think it was 51.
50?
60.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question, or we'll go on and show a few other things?
Any idea who built the cottages?
Yes, I mean, I know my Uncle Harold helped on 3 of them, and he worked for Clement Dean. I don't think Alvin Dean did any of those that I know of, because that was my uncle. So Mabel, do you know of anybody else who built there? Yeah. I know that Gilbert Anderson did some of the mason work, but not the stuff on the walls. That was all Grant did all that stuff himself. Yes? Yes?
I just had a question. This was 100 and some acres originally.
108 acres.
Most of the farm was where Bay Ridge Golf Course is now?
Correct. Right.
And what year was that purchased? And developed?
Well, it was 74, so minus, he said the golf course was 12 years old when I got there.
74?
So it's 62, so he probably bought it before that, because it took him years to get it ready for a golf course.
Well, I remember when it was built. I was maybe 11 or 12. So that's been 68. Yeah, that was last week. Yeah. We used to have forts out there. So we were old enough to wander out there without parents. Back then, that was 5.
You couldn't go to your 20?
Yeah.
Somewhere in that 60 to 70 range. I know it was there. I thought he told me 12 years. Okay, we'll move on a little bit here. Okay, a lot of these pictures are actually taken at the Yellow Barn, which is just across the street or behind Open Hearth Lodge. Because I didn't just go around and take a lot of pictures of our barn for doing a presentation. So I guess a couple things. There's 4 other barns. There's 4 barns like this barn with its truss system. And one was the barn here. The other one is the yellow barn that's behind Nordic Lodge. The red barn, the bigger barn at the red barn. And then Marvin Stever's barn, which is up on Q, and Town Line. That's the 4 barns that use the same structure. We're assuming, because they had a sawmill, that they cut all their own wood. We don't know if they cut the wood for all 4 barns. Now, the contractor that did that was Richard Peterson, and found out through the process that my great-grandfather was his brother. Yes. So,
Richard was my grandfather.
what? Yes. Yeah, Richard's your grandfather. He was actually the builder, and our grandfather was the helper. But, you know, you're much older because there's a generation difference.
Yeah.
Because it's your great-grandfather and my great-grandfather. But anyhow, the stories that my father and mother always told me about those two was that if they did a lot of painting, when they painted, one guy was on one side of the house and one guy was on the other side of the house. They never painted on the same side together. Yeah. Anyway, I contacted a gentleman by the name of Chris Rea, and he's involved with UW history on barns, and he's written some books on barns, and I sent him pictures of the truss work. And what he said it's called hammer beam truss or fly buttress is the type of construction, and it's made for more room, because if you look in here, they have the big cross beams that take up all the room when you're trying to store things, so they didn't have to have that. And it was used in old churches, the roofs and walls without horizontal beams, and more room and usage for hay and feed. So when we look at this, we'll go now back to pictures. This is the main difference that I found when walking around it, is this barn does not have the upper 2 doors. Ours had 2 doors for throwing feed out or putting stuff in, that this one doesn't have. The windows were the same, the silo is the same, the cupola is the same, the top windows are the same, everything, it truly is identical structures. And this is the important part, the 2 big doors, because they have 2 on the other side also. So you could take your team of horses right through there. When it got in the center, they would take the hay lift or the hay rake, which, right there, there's one hanging from the ceiling. And then they lift it up, and it'd go up to the ceiling, and then there was a rail up there, and they take the rail across the length of the barn, and how far they wanted to take the hay, and then drop the hay. We also had what they call the hay elevator, which is a bunch of 2x2s with 2 feet of rope between them and a union in the center. So it's like 12 feet, you laid all the hay on there, you rolled them up in a bundle, hauled it up there, and then it had a release in the bottom, so the 2 sides just fell out. And we had 3 of those. So they have one, Ellis May has one. And there it starts to give you an idea of the trusses. See how long they come up and over? There's down below, and that was all big heavy timbers. And this is when I have to tell you what happened in our barn. Because we had taken out some of those lower posts. It was easier to store stuff and bring stuff in, like lawnmowers or whatever it was. Well, then we decided to have barn dances, which we had the first few years at the resort. So we're up there, we're having a square dance, and I look at the floor and it's going, so I'm back underneath there with the pry bar, pushing a little bit. When it goes back, I'll push a little more. So yeah, so we had to put those props back in. So that was a little learning experience. There you can see how all the stalls were and the stanchions and all that. And in the Anderson barn, I talked with Dwight, and he figures they milked 14 to 20 cows. And that was the most they had, was 20. And they quit farming in the late 50s. Now that's the inside shot of the trusses of our barn, the one that's out here now. And if you take out where the two pieces come down, that was an elevator that was added later. So that whole centerpiece was not in there. And they used that, they'd run hay bales up there. Once they went from loose hay to hay bales, they had another part of the elevator that came down and just brought them up there. And there it is, on its way here. Well, that's about all I have for you. I guess something you should know is that after we used the barn, one other interesting thing, up in the barn was a big metal tank. And the gutters from the roof went into the tank to fill it with water. And then they could use that just to pressurize the water feeders for the cows. Then in the main section and in both barns, they had a hand water pump. Well, as they got tired of pumping water, they went upstairs and put about a 3-foot wheel with a peg coming out of it that went to an arm that went down to the pump. And then they used the electric motor with a belt to turn this big wheel. So as the wheel turned, that arm went and pumped the water. It was a pretty ingenious way of doing that. And they also, both places, they had an inside tank and an outside tank with a hole together. So in the summer, they just pulled the plug and let the water go outside. In winter, they put the plug in and kept it inside and then did the feeding.
What happened to the silo there?
To the silo?
Yeah.
The one at Little Sister?
Yeah.
The gentleman called me and said, "You better get over here, it's going down." And by the time I got there, it was already on the ground. So that was it. The other thing we used the barn for, I think almost the whole time I was there, we had an archery range upstairs in the barn. So most of the archers in northern York County learned to shoot up in our barn. It was always open, kids could bring or parents could bring their kids and everything else. So that was another use of it. And then we always had a basket on the higher end so we could play basketball in the wintertime. And then, but most of it in the end was used for storage, lawnmowers, electrical, plumbing, all those things. And my plow truck would go in there in the winter because we never had a garage. Well, that's about all I have. Do you have any more questions? Yes, Ray.
Is it the true the story that I heard that archery barn setup you had there was one of your secrets to getting there?
Kind of. Yes.
At the height of the resort, how many people did you employ?
Well, you're talking with the bar and grill?
Yep.
A little over 70.
That's with part-timers.
Right, some of those were part-time.
Buzzy?
Yes.
Any noteworthy guests that come to mind that stayed there over the years?
Well,
Yeah, guests that have stayed there?
Yeah, the noteworthy guests.
Well, I'll tell you a couple that moved up here and unfortunately just passed away. Did you know Kate, anybody?
Yes.
Okay, well, and Ethel. Okay. Ethel and Lamb stayed there for years and years.
50 years.
Yeah.
Ethel Lamb stayed there for 79 years, and Chuck stayed with us for 49 years. And then, as soon as his father passed away, Ethel moved up to Sister Bay.
Yeah, or Midvalski's and little brother,
Yes.
they were guests.
Right.
Trying to think of any other guests that have. This is Willie.
Willie Davidson, the designer for Harleys. That's actually, he was an interesting character because he came up with 3 other gentlemen and all they did was paint the whole time. And they painted it in different medias, everything. And actually, that far picture is painted by one of his buddies. He would not sell us any of his paintings. We we tried to buy it because we thought that we need to have one of his. But we have 2 of them from one of his other friends that came with him.
The reservation would never, when I take the reservation, it was never under his name. It was under somebody else. And finally one day they said, you know who that is? And I said, no, I don't. He said, that's really good. He's a very, very nice man.
Leslie, tell the story of the lady from the food channel who came for fish boil.
The one that choked down the fish bowl. You don't remember that? Yes, a food channel called us, and they wanted to do something on our fish boil. So we invited friends, and the Food Network came and whatever. And this woman, all of a sudden you could see her at the table and she was doing this. So lady, she swallowed a fish bone. So we got bread and everything out to her so she could get it down. So that's the memory of that. But I remember, a bunch of you were there, but she probably thought, I'll never have whitefish again.
And we did do that for about 35 years. We had fish boils.
Was that your own fish that you caught, or did you get it from somewhere else?
No, we got it from different Door County fishermen. In the last years, ours came from Lubers, and then we had all of our smoked fish came from Charlie's Smokehouse. So we were very, happy to keep using the local people.
Was that just for the guests at the resort, or could other people come?
We did both. We'd have 2 fish boils. The latter years, we'd have one for our guests, and then we'd have another one an hour later for anybody that had called and signed up. We did it all with reservation.
Are some of the descendants from, was it your great-grandfather who came here? Do they all still live in Little Sister in all the cabins surrounding the water?
No.
No? Okay.
No, the Anderson, the last Anderson had a home on the water in Sister Bay, and he just moved to Ellison Bay. Yeah. Yes.
Did you ever hear of an Erickson family who lived on Little Sister farm there? Erickson? Was Aunt Lydia?
Not that we know of.
Okay, thank you.
Chelsea, do you want to mention those paintings that are right by you? Is it that one by you, the Grace Anderson did?
No, the Grace ones are over here.
Over there, okay.
If you look against the wall over here, the 2 lower pictures are both done by Grace Anderson. And she did, many, many Door County pictures. And of course, one of them I have is of the resort. And the other one I have there is Caney Island, which is another one of her favorite places to go to and paint.